A lot of real estate investors have questions about the rules in Ohio regarding wholesaling. I'm here at the Ohio Department of Commerce's Division of Real Estate, and I'm very fortunate to have two of the state's top regulators with me to help educate investors on what's legal and what isn't legal. Division Counsel Kimberly Wells and Staff Attorney Sheila Vitale, thank you to both of you for joining me and taking time to be a resource to the members of National RIA. Okay. I made a reference in our earlier in the conversation about various troubling clauses and language that you see in contracts, so to speak. And I've run across a couple of phrases, and we've talked about these, like tying it up. Is that a phrase that you don't like to hear?
I do not like to hear that.
Why don't you like to hear that?
Because it leads me to believe that you're simply entering into the contract to show that you have some sort of interest or attempt to show that you have an interest to avoid license law. I'm just tying up the property. And so, first of all, that's not helping the seller. Second of all, as a regulator, I'm here to say, you have to follow 4735. And if that's your sole intention for entering into that contract, we've got a problem. And those are going to be some of the things that I'm going to be looking at, going, well, you're just tying it up to get an end buyer. Why don't you just get an agent? Why don't you have a licensed person help you? That's why we have licensed people.
That's a good point. What about the other phrase I heard is contingent upon finding another buyer?
Oh yeah, we see that a lot in contracts. Actually, are popping up where they will specifically state in the contract, I have no intention on closing on this contract. My only intention is to find that end buyer. There's clauses in contracts we see that the seller must immediately vacate upon signing this contract. Clauses like that people are putting in these contracts that clearly show they don't really have an intention to close. What they want is a vacant house to then advertise as, hey, look, got this, when they don't own anything on it.
I got you. What about the term flex option? Have you heard that?
Not as much.
No.
We've heard the option contracts and recording your option. The options that we see that get recorded are, ones that just say, I intend to possibly purchase this property. However, my true intention is to find an end buyer for the seller and purchase it and sell that contract for more than the property is under contract for. So, things like that that state, even on their face, that I don't intend to ever close on this, and this option's just in here to tie it up so nobody can close without me. Let's say this person comes in, gets a seller to sign this option contract without an intention of ever buying the property, and they go run down the courthouse, file it, and then seller wises up and says, you know what? Never heard back from this guy. I don't think he ever wanted to sell it. He hasn't done anything. And they legitimately sell their property. They're stuck with this lien now to get rid of before they can sell the property. So things like that where there is no intention are really what raise our flags.
I wanted to follow up with that option contract because I created an option contract for short sales that became very popular all over America. And the whole idea behind it was, I've got the right to buy this. I want to buy it. I'm negotiating with the bank. I'm going to be here whether it takes 6 weeks or 6 months to negotiate. But I want everybody to know I've got the right to buy this. So I'm recording a notice that I've got the right to buy this property. And so I've invested my time and resources in working with the bank to be able to buy this. I think that's evidence of an intent to go ahead and buy.
Right, and that's a completely different situation, especially when you're working with the bank and you've taken steps. And I understand that, there are people out there that teach, see who has foreclosures filed against them and then send them the letters or write this note and pin it to their car to see if they're willing to sell the house to you and undercut. So, it really is a totality of the circumstances that you need to look at.
The last thing that I want to talk to you about terms in a contract is, what if someone says, well, what if I get the seller to agree in writing that I've got the right to show, market, and advertise the house while I'm still trying to buy it?
And we see that. We see that a lot.
Oh, no, we see a lot, yes.
We see that a lot. You cannot contract to violate license law. So you can't enter into a contract and contractually say, well, the seller said I can do this. you still have to understand that there is license law, and you must follow license law. You can't contract around the law.
But let me ask it this way. What if I have in the contract where the seller gives me the right to advertise and show the property to a prospective tenant while I'm still in the escrow period? I think that's evidence that I'm planning on buying it as a rental, holding it and putting it out on the market as a rental. What do you think about that?
No, I think you have to own it before you can put it out there as a rental.
Okay.
You're still advertising something that you do not own, even if you have permission from.
Advertising something I don't own. There you go.
You're
I
getting
got you.
permission from someone. Just because I got permission from Sheila to put a sign in her yard today, and she tells me go ahead and do it, and I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars to do that, I can't do that because license law doesn't allow me to do that. Why? Because I don't have a license. I may have a law degree, but I do not have a license to sell real estate.
Well, you're just like me. I have a law degree and no license to sell.
Right.
Okay. So, but that's an interesting point because that's where you've just taught me something sitting right here about even to market for a tenant. I've got to wait till I close on it before I can start advertising for a tenant.
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. I learned something.